Good evening, dear listeners. I'm Davis, and it truly warms my heart to have you here tonight. Settle in, breathe softly, let the day fall away. Tell me, what is it that draws you to these cozy mysteries? Is it the quiet clues, the gentle suspense, the feeling of being part of something familiar? Share your thoughts below. Your comments mean so much. And do remember to subscribe so you never miss our nightly stories. The afternoon felt calm, soft, unhurried. A kind of hush rested over the village. Not heavy, just peaceful. The sort of peace that arrives when nothing asks for attention. Miss Marple stepped onto the lane with her usual slow pace. Her steps were light, measured, quiet. The kind of walking she preferred. Not rushed, not aimless, just steady. The air held a mild warmth. Comfortable enough for a stroll, comfortable enough for a small thought. Or two. Miss Marple carried her little bag. Nothing urgent inside. Just ordinary things. But she liked ordinary things. They kept life simple, predictable, reassuring. She passed the tea shop window. A single cup sat on a tray inside. Steam rose in a thin curl. Calm, inviting. She paused. Not long. Just a moment. She always noticed steam. Steam meant someone was nearby. Someone preparing something. Someone thinking of someone else. Small kindnesses mattered. She had learned that. Often they revealed more than big gestures, because small things carried truth. Truth without effort. Truth without display. She moved on. The lane felt almost empty. Not lonely. Just quiet enough to think. She liked that. Thinking required room, not space. Room. The kind inside the mind. Room where pieces could move, settle, arrange themselves. A flower pot stood by a doorstep. A simple thing, bright petals, a touch of color. She noticed one petal missing. Just one, not fallen, gone. A bird, perhaps, or a child passing by, or someone brushing past too quickly. Small details always had reasons, even when the reasons were dull. Miss Marple slowed at the next bend. Her glove brushed her coat sleeve. She straightened it. A habit. A small one. But it mattered. Tidy sleeves kept her focused. A tidy sleeve meant a tidy mind. The vicar's cat sat on the wall. Tail curled. Eyes half closed. A relaxed creature. Always observant. Cats, in her opinion, noticed more than most people. They reacted only when something shifted, when something subtle moved in the air, when something tiny felt off, and cats rarely misjudged, not when it mattered. The cat opened one eye, only one, looked at her, then looked past her, not behind her, past her, at the lane ahead, at nothing visible, or at something she had not yet seen. Miss Marple followed its gaze. A quiet stretch of road. Nothing unusual. Yet the cat stayed focused. Still, alert. Miss Marple felt a small tightening in her thoughts. A kind of mental pause. A sense of something not quite placed. Not troubling. Just waiting. She took another step. Slow. Steady. But her attention sharpened. Only a little. Just enough to mark the shift. The peace of the afternoon remained, but the edge of it had changed, softly, quietly, as though something ahead waited for her. Something small, something gentle, but not accidental. She walked on, eyes calm, mind steady, but her thoughts tilted forward, toward that unseen thing, toward that subtle shift, toward the reason the cat had looked past her. And as she reached the next corner, the quiet changed again, just enough for her to know something was about to reveal itself, and the lane would not feel the same after she saw it. Miss Marple reached the corner. Her steps slowed, only a little, just enough to think. Someone stood ahead, still, waiting, not moving at all. A woman, middle-aged perhaps, tidy coat, hands clasped, head lowered, as if steadying herself. Miss Marple noticed the posture first, tense, held tight, like someone bracing for something. Not fear, not shock, something quieter, a private tremor. The woman lifted her head. Her eyes met Miss Marple's, not directly, just a soft, hesitant glance, the kind that checks before speaking, the kind that hopes someone might understand, without asking too many questions. Miss Marple gave a small nod, a gentle one, a permission. It helped people speak. She had learned that long ago. The woman stepped closer, slow, unsure, her breath unsteady, not loud, just uneven. Miss Marple? A thin voice, barely above a whisper, as if sound itself felt heavy today. Miss Marple offered a mild smile. I am, yes. The woman swallowed. Her hands tightened, her coat sleeve shifted. A tiny tremble ran through the fabric, a micro-disturbance. Miss Marple noticed it at once. I'm sorry to stop you, the woman said. Her words trembled, soft, shaky. The vicar said you might pass this way. Miss Marple waited. People revealed more when not hurried. Silence invited truth. Quietly, calmly, the woman drew in a thin breath. Her eyes glistened at the corners. Not tears, just worry, collecting, slowly, heavily. I didn't know who else to speak to, she murmured. I've tried to think clearly. I've tried to stay calm. But I can't. Miss Marple remained still, her posture soft, her attention steady. She had seen this many times. Not panic, not confusion. A different kind of ache. The ache of knowing something is wrong. Before proof arrives. The woman's voice dropped again, lower, barely formed. Miss Marple, something is wrong at my home. A pause, a long one. Miss Marple felt the shift. The first thinning of the cozy air. A small tightening. A quiet ripple through the calm. The woman's fingers clutched her handbag, knuckles pale, shoulders drawn. Another micro-disturbance. Miss Marple noticed. Every detail mattered, even posture, even hands. I've tried to tell myself I'm mistaken, she whispered, but I can't. Not this time. Miss Marple waited again, her silence steady, warm, inviting. People spoke more honestly when given room. The woman inhaled once more. A small, shaking sound escaped. Then the words finally came. Slow, heavy, true. Someone is missing. Another pause. Deeper now, as if the world held its breath with her. The woman blinked hard, her voice barely held. It happened yesterday, quietly, without warning, and no one believes me. Miss Marple's eyes softened. She had heard this tone before, many times. The tone of worry, turning into certainty. The tone of a truth pressing its way out. The woman stepped closer, her voice almost gone. Miss Marple, please. I know something is wrong, I know it. My daughter is missing. Miss Marple exhaled gently. Not surprise, not alarm, just the recognition of a shift, a new path forming, a new thread waiting. And as she looked into the woman's trembling eyes, she felt the first click of a puzzle beginning. Quiet, soft, but unmistakable. And the calm afternoon no longer felt entirely calm. Miss Marple stood quiet. The woman took a small breath, a hesitant one. Thin, unsteady. My daughter, she said. The words barely formed. She didn't come home yesterday. Miss Marple nodded once. Slow, encouraging, not pushing, just letting the woman speak. She said she was going to the post office. A pause. She never reached it. Her hands twisted the edge of her bag. A soft tremor, not frantic, just worn from worry. A micro-disturbance. Miss Marple noted it. I waited, the woman whispered. I told myself she might be delayed, or visiting someone, or reading somewhere. Another pause. A swallow. Thin breath in, thin breath out. But the hours passed. Miss Marple kept, her gaze calm. Soft eyes helped people talk. A gentle face loosened fear. The woman continued. She always tells me if she's late. Always. The word held weight, a kind of certainty only a mother carries. Miss Marple understood that tone. Mothers sensed shifts before anyone else. It was a kind of quiet instinct. Not loud, not dramatic, just solid. "I went to her room this morning," the woman said. Another breath. Not steady. But nothing was touched. Everything just sat there. Miss Marple tilted her head. "How so?" "The bed was made. Too neatly, I think. Her bag was in the wrong place. Her things looked arranged. Not used. Not lived in." Her eyes moved away, down to the lane, as if searching for clarity in the quiet ground. Then back to Miss Marple. "It felt wrong," she whispered. "Not frightening wrong, just not normal." Miss Marple allowed that thought a moment. People often tried to soften their fear. But the truth still slipped through. A micro-tremor in the voice. A pause too long. A breath too shallow. Clues were everywhere. "And the police?" Miss Marple asked softly. "They think she left by choice." A small shake of the head. "No, she didn't. Not my Emily." Miss Marple nodded again. She understood that sentence. Villagers often dismissed instincts, but instincts rarely lied. "Why come to me?" she asked gently. The woman hesitated. A long moment. Then, "I've heard how you notice things. Small things. The sort that others overlook." Her voice dipped again. "It sounds silly when I say it aloud, but I feel you'll understand. I feel you'll take me seriously." Miss Marple's hands folded lightly. A calm gesture. She had heard such requests before. Quiet pleas. Soft fears. People reached for her when they had nowhere else to stand. "I don't ask you for answers," the woman said. "Only attention. Only a little time. Only someone to believe me." Miss Marple looked at her fully now. No hurry. No doubt. Just certainty settling into place. "I'll come," she said. Her tone steady, warm, firm. "I will listen, and I will look." The woman exhaled, relief mixed with fear, a fragile blend, but real. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more than you know." Miss Marple gave a small nod again, soft, measured, quiet confidence beneath it. "We shall start with her room," she murmured. "Rooms speak, you know, if one listens gently." The woman's eyes widened, not with hope, but with recognition, of someone who finally understood. Miss Marple took one step forward, then another, the case beginning to form in her mind. Light threads, soft threads, but threads all the same, and as they walked together toward the lane, a new thought rose inside her. Quiet, firm, certain. Something in that room would not match the mother's words, and that would be the first true clue. The house felt still, quiet in a familiar way. Not heavy, just waiting. The woman led Miss Marple inside. A small hallway, a soft turn, then a door on the left. "Her room," she whispered. Miss Marple stepped in, stopped, let her eyes rest. Slowly, carefully. She never rushed first looks. First looks mattered. They gave shape to truth. The bed stood neat, too neat. The slightest stiffness in the blanket, a tight corner, a perfectly straight line. Miss Marple noticed at once. Beds don't hold such lines on busy mornings. Not from a young girl. Not unless something else guided the hand. She moved closer. Her glove brushed the blanket. A soft touch. Barely there, but enough to feel the difference. Fabric told stories. This fabric felt untouched, or touched with intention. She stepped back, let the room settle again. Her attention shifted to the desk. Small, modest, orderly, too orderly. The papers lay in a clean stack, edges sharp. No notes, no pencil out of place, no half-finished thought lying open. Not right. Not for a girl who left the house in a hurry. Not for someone with plans for the day. Lives leave traces, even tidy lives. Miss Marple leaned in slightly. A drawer stood ajar, barely. A thin sliver of space, almost invisible, almost accidental. But nothing was accidental here. Not today. She closed it gently. The click sounded off, a fraction too soft. A drawer recently disturbed. A micro-disturbance. Her mind filed it away. She shifted to the window. Simple frame, curtain drawn halfway. The latch rested in place. But the dust near it told another story. A faint smear. A light finger mark. Someone touched it recently. Gently. Testing something. Miss Marple looked closer. No smudge outside, only inside. A quiet conclusion. Whoever touched the latch did not leave. They merely checked, then walked away. She turned to the door. Not much to see. But small things matter, always. A thin scratch near the hinge. Fresh, light, barely visible, like a bag brushed against it, or someone left in haste. Not panic, just haste with purpose. The mother watched from the corner. Hands clasped, breath held. Miss Marple gave her a small nod. Not reassurance. Acknowledgement. Understanding. Then she stepped into the garden. A short walk through the back door. Grass trimmed. Path clear. Everything expected. Almost everything. A single footprint near the hedge. Soft. Light. Not deep enough for weight. Not the daughter's shoe. Smaller. Or lighter. Or someone standing only a moment. The hedge behind it bent slightly. Not broken. Just pressed. A sign of someone watching. Or waiting. Briefly. Miss Marple straightened. Her eyes narrowed. Not suspicion. Focus. The room told one story. The garden told another. Neither matched the mother's fear. Neither matched the daughter's habits. Two contradictions. Side by side. Quiet. Subtle. But real. And contradictions always meant one thing. Someone else had been here. And they left something behind that Miss Marple had not yet seen. Miss Marple stepped back into the room. Slow. Quiet. Her thoughts settling into their usual order. Clue first. Reason second. Pattern last. She looked at the bed again. The blanket was smooth. Almost stiff. The kind of smoothness no hurried morning ever creates. Not from a young girl with daily routines. Not from someone planning to walk to the post office. Miss Marple touched the edge gently. Her fingers pressed the fabric. No crease shifted. No fold loosened. Too exact. Too careful. Too prepared. A made bed is common, but a perfect bed, that meant something. Something done for effect. Something meant to be seen. Not used. Her eyes moved to the shoes beneath the table. Polished, placed evenly. Toes aligned, heels touching. Miss Marple frowned slightly, a micro-expression. Barely there, but real. Shoes tell truth. They show movement. They show return. They show hurry. These shoes showed none of that. They had not been touched that morning. Not pulled out. Not slid back in. Not disturbed. Not lived with. Perfect shoes. Perfect bed. Too perfect. That was the trouble. Miss Marple shifted toward the desk. The papers sat in their tidy stack. Edges sharp. Unbent. Unsigned. But one page drew her eye. A letter. Unfinished. Pen beside it. Cap off. Miss Marple leaned closer. Her finger hovered above the page. Not touching. Just measuring the feel of it. The word stopped mid-sentence. Not from interruption. Not from sudden thought. But from staging. The ink dried in a thin, even line. No blur. No smear. No rush. It had been placed that way. Not left that way. A staged letter. A staged desk. A staged bed. A staged set of shoes. A room arranged for effect. But effect for whom? And why? Miss Marple looked around again. Her eyes slowed on each object. The brush on the dresser. Straight. Centered. The handkerchief folded in an exact square. The book placed perfectly flat. Not one thing sat in a natural state. Everything held intention, purpose, position. Miss Marple lowered her voice, barely above a breath. Someone arranged this. The woman beside her gasped softly. Not loud, not startled. just a small break in the quiet. "Arranged?" she whispered. Her fingers tightened around her bag strap. A tiny tremble, a micro-disturbance. Miss Marple saw it, noted it, filed it. "It isn't her style," Miss Marple said, her tone gentle, measured. "Your daughter's habits wouldn't create this room." "It looked wrong to me, too," the woman murmured. "But I thought I was imagining things." Miss Marple shook her head once. "No, you observed correctly." Her gaze returned to the desk. A single hairpin rested beside the pen. Placed, not dropped. Two aligned with the pen's angle. Hairpins do not fall neatly. Hairpins fall like thoughts. Crooked, uneven, thoughtless. This one lay in perfect line, like a marker, a signal, or a quiet message. Miss Marple bent slightly, her eyes narrowed, not with suspicion, with calculation. "Someone wanted this room to tell a story," she said softly. "A simple story. A quick one. One easy to accept." She paused. "Let the air settle. Let the truth nestle gently in place. But real stories," she whispered, "never look this tidy." The woman swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" Miss Marple straightened, her mind turning, threads forming, a pattern emerging beneath the calm. "It means," she said quietly, "we must look where the tidiness ends." She turned to the door, then to the window, then toward the garden path outside, because staging always has an opposite, a shadow behind the neatness, a flaw left untouched, and somewhere in this house, that flaw waited, waiting for Miss Marple to find it next. Miss Marple stayed in the room a moment longer, not moving, just thinking. Quiet thinking always mattered. It let small truths rise. It let clutter fall away. It let patterns breathe. She looked again at the bed. Still smooth. Still perfect. Still wrong. Beds breathe a little. They shift. They crease. They hold life. This one held none. That was the problem. Then the shoes. Neat. Even. Aligned like someone measuring angles. Young girls don't align shoes like that. Not daily, not naturally, not unless they're preparing for something formal. And this wasn't formal. This was staged. Her eyes moved to the desk. The letter bothered her. Not the words, not the pause, the intention. Unfinished letters tell stories. Real ones. Messy ones. Letters left in haste look alive. This one looked arranged. A letter waiting to be found. Not a letter waiting to be finished. That difference mattered. A lot. Miss Marple looked at the hairpin again, still lying neatly, beside the pen. Still too straight, still too deliberate. Hairpins behave like people in a hurry. They drop at odd angles, they slide, they fall where they want. This one had been placed, not lost. She folded her hands lightly. A gentle habit. It steadied her thoughts. Something was missing. Something very small, but something that should be here. What was it? A routine object? A morning item? Something a girl uses daily? A bag? A scarf? A book? A pair of gloves? Her mind floated through the usual list. Slow, calm, unforced. Then the thought settled. A simple one, almost too simple. Where was the everyday clutter? A real room breathes with tiny messes. A pencil left crooked. A book opened halfway. A hairbrush lying askew. A wool thread on the floor. A cup not quite centered. This room held none. Not one stray item. Not one natural sign of life. Everything too perfect. Everything too placed. Miss Marple's gaze drifted to the wardrobe. Closed. Quiet. Too quiet. Wardrobes tell stories too. They carry weight, they hide habits, they reveal rhythms. She stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the handle. Light touch, barely felt. Enough to judge the resistance. The handle was warm. Slightly. Very slightly. Interesting. Very interesting. Someone opened this recently. Not long ago. Not carelessly. But not routinely either. A micro-disturbance. Soft. Subtle. But enough. She did not open it yet. She held the thought instead, turning it, fitting it with the other pieces. Something was missing. Something was added. Something was placed. Something was touched. Something was wrong. All four truths lined up, quietly, neatly, like the room itself. But real truth rarely lines up so easily. Not without leaving shadows. Not without leaving cracks. Miss Marple took one step back, then another, then paused completely. The room was too perfect. But perfection always breaks at the edges. And at this very edge, the first crack had just appeared. And Miss Marple knew exactly where she needed to look next. Miss Marple left the house quietly. The lane felt calm again. But her mind did not match the calm. Not anymore. She headed toward the post office. A short walk. Just enough time to let thoughts settle. The post office lady stood behind the counter, glasses low on her nose, hands busy with envelopes. But her eyes lifted the moment Miss Marple entered. "Oh, Miss Marple," she said softly. "You're early today." Miss Marple offered a small smile. "I wanted to ask something." The woman straightened, a micro-pause in her work, a sign of interest or concern. "Did you see Emily yesterday?" Miss Marple asked. Another small pause, not long, but noticeable. Then the woman nodded. "I did, but only briefly. She asked about a parcel, said she might collect it later. Clue 1, a parcel, a plan, a reason to return. But she never came back," the woman added. Her voice carried a faint hesitation. Not doubt, something else. Miss Marple noticed. "Is something troubling you?" The woman lowered her voice. She seemed distracted, looking around a bit, not nervous, just watchful. Suspicion 1. Someone nearby? Someone following? Someone expected? Miss Marple thanked her and stepped out. The air felt unchanged, but her thoughts changed shape again. She walked farther down the lane, toward the bakery. Warm smells lingered at the doorway, but she ignored them today. She needed answers. The baker wiped his hands on his apron. "Good morning, Miss Marple. What brings you in?" "Emily," she said simply. His brows lifted. "Oh, yes, I saw her. Another clue. Another thread." "She bought a small loaf," he continued. "Nothing unusual, but she left quickly, almost too quickly." Miss Marple tilted her head. "How do you mean?" He thought for a moment. She didn't wait for change, just walked off, as if her mind was somewhere else. Contradiction 1. At the post office, Emily looked around. Here she rushed away. 2 different moods, 2 different moments. "What direction did she go?" Miss Marple asked. The baker pointed toward the green. "Not home. The other way." Miss Marple nodded, filed it, placed it beside the other clues. She made her way toward the houses near the green. A neighbor swept her doorstep slowly. Rhythmic strokes. Quiet pattern. She looked up as Miss Marple approached. "Oh dear," she murmured. "I suppose this is about Emily." Miss Marple's eyes softened. "You've heard?" The woman nodded. "Her mother came by this morning, so worried." Miss Marple stood beside her. "Did you see Emily yesterday?" The neighbor hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." But something felt odd. Miss Marple waited. Silence helped, always. She was talking to someone near the hedge. The neighbor whispered. "A man. Not from here." Suspicion 2. A stranger, near the hedge, where the garden footprint lay. "Did you see his face?" Miss Marple asked. The neighbor shook her head. "No, just his coat. Dark. Long." He stood very still. Miss Marple felt the faintest shift inside her mind. Threads connecting. Softly, quietly. The neighbor added one more detail. A small one, but important. Emily looked uneasy. Not frightened, just uneasy, like she didn't know whether to leave or stay. Miss Marple exhaled slowly. A quiet breath. A thinking breath. 3 people. 3 clues. 3 contradictions. 3 suspicions. The pattern was forming, just barely. Soft, thin, but real. And as Miss Marple turned back toward the lane, a new thought pressed forward. The stranger near the hedge wasn't finished with this story. Miss Marple walked back toward the lane. Slow steps, light steps. Her mind sorting things one thread at a time. Conflicting clues always told the truth. Not directly, but sideways, through gaps, through mismatched stories. At the corner, she saw Mr. Dalloway, retired, observant, a man who noticed small things without meaning to. He lifted his hat politely. "Morning, Miss Marple." She returned the gesture. "Good morning. May I ask, did you see Emily yesterday?" He nodded without hesitation. "Oh, yes. She walked past here just after noon, heading toward the post office." Miss Marple paused. "Are you sure?" "Quite sure," he said. She waved. Looked cheerful enough. Cheerful. Waving. Walking toward the post office. Another version of the story. A gentle contradiction. Miss Marple thanked him and continued. Her thoughts adjusted, shifted, rebalanced. If Emily walked toward the post office, why did the baker say she left in a hurry? Why did the neighbor say she looked uneasy? Why did the mother say the room felt staged? Too many moods, too many versions. Something didn't align. Near the green, she saw Mrs. Lenton folding laundry. Quiet woman, soft voice, careful eyes. "Good day, Miss Marple," she said. Miss Marple approached gently. "Mrs. Lenton, may I trouble you? Did you see Emily yesterday?" The woman thought for a moment. "No, not once. I was outside most of the afternoon. If she'd passed by, I would have noticed." Another contradiction, another soft knot in the thread. Mr. Dalloway saw her walking. Mrs. Lenton saw nothing. Two vantage points, two stories, both confident, both sincere. Miss Marple nodded. "Thank you." She turned to leave. "But Mrs. Lenton added quietly. There was someone else, though. A man." Miss Marple paused. Always pause when someone adds something at the end. Last-minute details often mattered most. "A man?" "Yes," Mrs. Lenton whispered. "He stood near the corner, not moving, just watching the road." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed gently. "The same man Emily spoke to." Mrs. Lenton's brow furrowed. "I didn't see Emily. Only him. He was there for a while, maybe waiting for someone." Soft tension tightened a little more, like a thread pulling from both ends. Miss Marple thanked her and walked on. Each step carried a new question. Each question nudged the pattern slightly. She stopped outside the small footpath near the hedge. The place where the neighbor saw Emily. The place where the stranger stood. The place where the garden footprint pointed. Something was wrong with the timing. Very wrong. If Emily walked toward the post office, why did she end up near the hedge? If she stood near the hedge, why did she rush out of the bakery? If she rushed from the bakery, why did Mr. Dalloway see her cheerful? 3 moods, 3 directions, 3 sightings. None matched. Miss Marple felt a soft chill inside her thoughts. Not fear. Recognition. When a person is seen in 3 different ways, within the same hour, it usually means one of those people wasn't Emily at all. Miss Marple returned to the house with the mother. Slow steps, quiet thoughts. Something had begun to shift in the pattern. Just a little, but enough. The mother opened the door. Her hands trembled again. Small tremors, soft ones, but real. "Please," she whispered. "Look as long as you need." Miss Marple nodded. Her eyes moved around once more, noticing what had changed. Rooms always change when left alone too long. People too. Both reveal more when revisited. The first change waited on the chair. A coat. Folded. Placed neatly. Too neatly. The mother frowned. That wasn't there earlier. Miss Marple touched the sleeve. Light touch. Barely anything. But enough to feel the fabric. It was cold. Not worn today. Not used recently. "Where does she usually keep it?" Miss Marple asked. "In the wardrobe," the mother said softly. "Always." A coat found in the wrong place. Placed perfectly. Another tidy object in a room. Already too tidy. Too many neat things. Too many intentional touches. Miss Marple lifted the collar. A hairpin rested underneath it. Straight. Perfect. Aligned with the seam. Not dropped. Placed. Hairpins don't hide under collars. Not on their own. Not without hands guiding them. A micro-disturbance in the coat story. Another piece fitting the wrong puzzle. Miss Marple felt the gentle tightening in her thoughts again. The same tightening she felt in the garden earlier. She walked outside, eyes scanning the grass. Slow. Careful. No rush. The bicycle track was still there. Faint. Thin. Curved slightly toward the hedge. Not toward the gate. Not toward the lane. Toward the hedge only. No second track beside it. No return path. A one-way movement. Or a staged one. Miss Marple crouched slightly. Her gloved hand hovered over the mark. Not touching. Just sensing. The line was too clean for morning dew. Too clean for last night. Someone made it recently. Very recently. She stood again. Her eyes followed the curve. It led to a narrow space between bushes. A small opening. Quiet. Hidden, unless one looked closely. She stepped forward. Branches brushed her sleeve lightly. A gentle tap. A micro sound. Easy to miss. This was the hidden path. Soft soil. Thin impressions. Something moved through here. Something careful. Miss Marple didn't step inside yet. She let the path speak first. Paths always speak before one walks them. They hold whispers. They hold the shape of feet. They hold the truth of direction. On the ground near the entrance lay a small scrap. Paper. Bent. Torn. One edge curled. The ink faint. Faded words. A letter fragment. Miss Marple lifted it gently. One line remained readable. Don't tell anyone yet. Her eyes lowered. Her breath softened. Her mind sharpened. A staged room. A staged bed. A staged desk. A staged coat. A staged track. A staged path. Now, a staged fragment, placed for effect, placed for simple explanation, placed for a neat story. Miss Marple whispered, "The evidence is planted." The mother's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Miss Marple folded the paper lightly. "It means someone wants us to believe a very tidy lie." She looked again at the hidden path, then at the bicycle track, then at the torn scrap in her hand. Everything pointed somewhere, but not where truth lived. And as she turned toward the bushes, she felt it clearly. The real trail was not the one laid out for her, but the one someone tried very hard to hide. Miss Marple stood at the narrow opening in the hedge, calm, still, letting her thoughts settle before she stepped inside. Hidden paths were delicate things. They required patience, quiet observation, soft steps. She moved forward. Branches brushed lightly against her coat. A faint tap. Another micro-disturbance. Someone passed through here earlier. Not long ago. Not carelessly. The path bent into a thin stretch. Barely a lane. Just wide enough for one person. Miss Marple walked slowly, noticing every shift in the soil, every press in the leaves. A light groove crossed the dirt. Not deep, not heavy. Something dragged, something moved. Her eyes followed it, a slow, curved line leading deeper into the trees. Not a fall, not an accident, a deliberate movement. She continued. A small clearing opened ahead. Quiet, unassuming, nothing alarming, nothing obvious. That alone made it important. Hidden places rarely show loud clues. They show quiet ones, soft signs, gentle hints. She looked down at the ground again. 2 impressions near the edge. Not footprints. Knee marks. Someone knelt here. Briefly. Purposely. Why kneel? Why here? Her mind paused on the thought, then moved on. She walked toward the narrow lane behind the clearing. A simple dirt track. Well used. But not today. Its surface held one fresh line. Just one. A bicycle tire. The same pattern from the garden. The same angle. The same width. A match. The track continued down the lane. Miss Marple followed, her steps careful, her attention steady. Halfway down, She found a break in the pattern. The tire mark wobbled slightly, shifted, veered left. Something happened here, something small, something that made the rider pause. A hesitation, a correction, a sign of uncertainty. She stepped closer. A small stone lay near the mark, not big, not heavy, but moved, shifted from its natural place. Someone tried to steady themselves, or hide something, or both. Miss Marple moved on. The lane opened near the river path. A gentle turn, a quiet bend. The river whispered faintly in the distance. Not dramatic, just present enough to reassure. She studied the ground. Light footprints, not Emily's. Too large, too spaced. An adult. A man, perhaps. Walking slowly, deliberately. Beside them lay another faint clue. A pressed patch of grass. Oval. Flattened. Something rested there briefly. Something carried. Something set down. Not lost. Moved. Something was moved. Not dropped. Not abandoned. Moved with purpose. Miss Marple lowered herself slightly. Her fingers hovered just above the mark. She felt the shape without touching. Too smooth for a bag. Too small for luggage. Too narrow for a box. A thought whispered through her mind. Soft. Certain. Something was carried out of the house. Through the hedge. Down the hidden path. Along the lane. Toward the river. Something important. Something connected to Emily. Something the staged room tried to erase. Miss Marple stood fully again. Her eyes followed the bend of the river path. Quiet. Still. Waiting. The truth was somewhere up ahead. Not loud, not bright, but present, waiting for the next step. And as she prepared to take it, a new idea settled inside her. Calm, cold, clear. Whatever was moved along this path was meant to replace something that should have been inside Emily's room. Miss Marple stood at the bend of the river path. Her eyes rested on the ground, calm, quiet, thinking. The marks told one story, the room told another, and the two stories refused to agree. That was the first sign of misdirection. Not noise, not confusion, just a soft disagreement between clues. She walked back toward the lane slowly, letting each detail settle again, one at a time. No rush. Convenient clues were always suspicious. Real clues rarely behaved so politely. They arrived crooked, scattered, uneven, just like real life. But Emily's clues, no. They were too clean, too aligned, too eager to be found. A coat folded, a hairpin placed, a letter unfinished. A bicycle track curved perfectly. A path pressed just enough. Miss Marple paused at the edge of the hedge. Her mind felt the shift. A small inward click. The kind that happens when a puzzle piece doesn't fit. She looked at the bicycle mark again. Thin, straight, fresh, too fresh, far too fresh, for the timeline given. If Emily left yesterday, the track should be older, softer, blurred by the day, not crisp, not sharp. Someone made it recently, not yesterday, today, while she and the mother were away. A micro-disturbance settled near her feet. A fallen leaf pressed into the track, not crushed, just resting. A sign the mark came before the leaf. But not long before. Miss Marple followed the track again. Short steps, thoughtful steps. Noticing every line, every curve. The track avoided rough ground, avoided stones, avoided patches that would blur it, almost as if someone chose the neatest soil, on purpose. Misdirection has a certain politeness, a certain smoothness, and this smoothness was everywhere. She looked back toward the house, then toward the lane, then toward the neighbor's hedge. All the clues pointed outward, away from the house, away from Emily, away from the truth, too outward, too direct, too organized. Real disappearances scatter clues. False ones arrange them. Miss Marple stepped into a quieter spot. A small patch the stranger might have ignored. The soil there told a different story. One muddy print. Shallow. Wrong direction. Someone walked back through here. Not forward, not toward escape. Toward the house. Quietly, carefully. That single print broke the entire trail. Because it didn't match the stage direction. It didn't match the story someone tried to build. Miss Marple inhaled. Soft, steady. Her thoughts lined themselves neatly. The coat inside the room, the track near the hedge, the neat hairpin, the placed fragment, the tidy bed, the rushed sightings, the cheerful wave, the uneasy look, all too convenient, all too arranged. Someone wanted the village to believe Emily walked away. Someone wanted the path to look obvious, simple, clean. But truth is rarely clean, and this truth had fingerprints of intention all over it. Miss Marple whispered to herself, "They wanted us to follow this trail." She turned her head, eyes narrowing slightly, not sharply, just enough to settle into certainty. And if they wanted us to follow it? Her gaze returned to the house, to the tidy room, to the perfect bed. Then the real truth must be hiding in the one place no one was meant to look. Miss Marple walked back toward the village. Slow steps, calm mind. The trail outside had reached its limit. Now she needed voices. Voices tell truths footsteps cannot. Her first stop was the landlord, a careful man, quiet, always watching from behind his counter. "You're asking about Emily," he said. A small shift in his posture. A micro-disturbance. Barely there. "Yes," Miss Marple replied softly. "When did you last see her?" He rubbed the counter with a cloth. Unnecessary wiping. Another disturbance. "Well, she came in 2 days ago," he said. "Looking for a room, just for the afternoon." Miss Marple paused. "A room? Why?" "She didn't say," he murmured. But she seemed thoughtful, as if deciding something. A memory. Soft, unfiltered, useful. But then he leaned closer. "Though I shouldn't say this, I think she met someone there. A secret, not fully told, but hinted." Miss Marple thanked him and moved on. One thread added. Noted. Placed. Next she visited the farmer near the crossroads. A practical man, not talkative, not fanciful. He paused near his gate when he saw her. "Miss Marple, looking for someone?" "Emily," she said. "You saw her yesterday." He nodded. "Passed by my field, but she wasn't alone." Miss Marple's eyes softened. "With whom?" "A fellow in a dark coat," he said. "I only glimpsed him. Tall, still, didn't speak. The same stranger, again, but then he frowned. Funny thing, though, if she was heading to the post office, she walked the opposite way. A contradiction. Quiet, precise. Miss Marple filed it. The circle tightened further. She continued to the library. The trustee sat at a small desk, pencil in hand, ledger open. He looked up at once. "Oh dear, is this about Emily?" Miss Marple nodded. "Yes. Tell me anything helpful." He tapped the pencil lightly. A nervous tick. Another micro-disturbance. "She borrowed a book last week," he said. "A guide on local footpaths." Miss Marple raised an eyebrow. "She rarely reads travel guides." "Exactly," he whispered. "That's why I noticed." And she returned it early. Very early. Hardly read. A memory wrapped in suspicion. But then he leaned closer. She asked if anyone else had borrowed it recently. Anyone with interest in old roots. A secret. Soft. Small. Important. Miss Marple nodded slowly. A new pattern forming. Her last stop was the maid who helped in Emily's street. Young girl. Honest eyes. Uneven breathing. "Miss Marple," she said. I didn't want to say anything before. Miss Marple waited. Patience always opened doors. "I saw her at dusk," the maid whispered. "Not at the lane, not at the green, at the back garden, near the hedge." Miss Marple leaned slightly. "Yes?" She wasn't alone. "Again?" "No," the maid said, her voice steadier now. She was arguing, not loudly, but enough to see tension in her hands. A contradiction to the cheerful wave. Another piece shifting. And the person? Miss Marple asked. The maid hesitated, then whispered, I think it was someone she knew. Miss Marple let the silence deepen, then breathed in gently. Threads tightened, edges touched, names formed. A list now lived quietly in her mind. Short, precise, possible, landlord, farmer, trustee, maid, and the stranger. 5 people, 5 angles, 5 truths waiting. As she stepped back, toward the lane, her calm expression softened even more, because one of those 5 had just slipped into the center of her suspicion, and that person had left a trace she was finally ready to follow. Miss Marple walked slowly toward the back of the lane. Her thoughts were steady now, quiet, organized. The list in her mind guided her steps. One detail tugged at her, a small thing, barely spoken, but important. The maid's voice lingered. Near the hedge, near the back. Back paths always held truths. People avoided the front when they carried secrets. Miss Marple reached the edge of the lane. A narrow turn waited, barely noticeable, just wide enough for one person. She followed it. Soft steps, slow breathing, her eyes scanning gently. Behind the hedge stood an old shed, plain, silent, unused by most, ignored by many. She paused at the door. Her hand brushed the wood lightly. A faint shift, a micro-disturbance. Someone had touched this recently. Not long ago. Miss Marple pushed the door open a little. It creaked softly, not loudly, just enough to show it hadn't moved often. Inside, dust sat in uneven patches, not a full layer. Interrupted in places, pressed down in thin lines. Not natural, not accidental. Something had been dragged, or placed, or removed. Miss Marple stepped inside. Her eyes adjusted. Her thoughts sharpened. Near the corner sat a small storehouse crate, closed, but not latched. The lid lifted too easily. Someone opened it recently. Someone uncertain. Someone quick. She checked inside. Nothing. Completely empty. Almost too empty. An empty crate inside a forgotten shed rarely meant nothing. It meant something had been here. Not long ago. Something carried. Moved. Hidden. She turned slowly. Her gaze landed on the cottage at the far end of the path. A small building. Quiet. Plain. Easy to miss. The back door sat slightly open. Not wide. A finger's width. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to hint. A soft invitation. Miss Marple walked toward it. Her hand touched the frame. Warm. Slightly. Enough to tell her it had been held recently. She stepped inside. The room felt simple, sparse, not lived in, not abandoned either. A place used only when needed. Not daily, not casually. A table sat near the wall, a chair beside it, both untouched. But the carpet beneath them held a faint mark. Square, light, barely there. Something had rested here. Something with weight. Something important. Miss Marple knelt slightly. Her gloved hand hovered over the mark. She did not touch it, but she understood it. A box, a case, a bag, something placed, something moved. Her eyes drifted upward, toward a small dresser, old, plain, with one drawer slightly crooked, a quiet floor, a sign of use. Not recent, but not ancient. She opened it gently. Inside lay a folded cloth. Nothing else. At least, nothing obvious. But the cloth sat unevenly, pressed on one side, lifted on the other. A hidden drawer. Yes. She recognized the gap instantly. Miss Marple pressed the lower panel. A soft click answered. The drawer slid open. Slow. Quiet. Inside lay a single object. Small. Light. Very real. Not staged. Not arranged. Not tidy. Emily's bracelet. The one her mother described, the one she never removed, the one missing from her room. Not lost, moved. Miss Marple held her breath, not in fear, in confirmation. This was the first honest clue. The first truth untouched by intention. The first sign of what really happened. She stood, her mind steady, her steps calm, because now she knew something important. Something Emily never meant to leave behind, and someone never meant for Miss Marple to find. Miss Marple returned to the village with slow steps. The bracelet rested in her pocket. A real clue. A quiet wait. Not staged, not arranged. Now she needed voices again. Not loud ones. Not defensive ones. Quiet voices. The kind that crack under truth. Her first stop was the repairman. He worked near the lane. Tools organized. Movement steady. "Good afternoon," Miss Marple said softly. He looked up. A small flinch. Barely there. A micro-disturbance. "Oh, Miss Marple," he murmured. "Something wrong?" She smiled gently. "When did you last see Emily?" He wiped his hands on a cloth. Too quickly. Too many times. A week ago, I think." Miss Marple tilted her head. "A week?" "Yes." "Why?" Her voice stayed calm. "No reason. Only—" Her bracelet was found behind the old cottage. The cloth slipped slightly. His fingers tightened. Another disturbance. "I don't know anything about that," he whispered. But his voice cracked. Just enough. A truth pushing upward. Held down. Miss Marple thanked him softly and walked on. She did not press. Pressing breaks stories. Soft patience opens them. Next, she visited the library. Trustee again. He sat at his desk. Ledger open. Pencil tapping. Miss Marple approached quietly. "You mentioned Emily asked about footpaths." He nodded. "Yes." She seemed curious. Miss Marple lowered her voice. "And?" Worried. He froze mid-tap. Just for a second. A small pause. A tiny shift. "Well," he whispered. She asked if anyone had followed her recently. Miss Marple leaned slightly. "Followed?" "Yes," he said. She didn't explain. Only said she felt watched near the old shed. Another truth. Slipped gently. Not forced. Miss Marple thanked him. Left him in his quiet guilt. Then walked toward the green. A friend of Emily sat on a bench. Hands folded. Eyes down. Miss Marple sat beside her. Slowly. Softly. "You knew her well," she said. The friend nodded. "Yes. We spoke often." "And recently?" A long breath escaped the girl. "I didn't tell anyone this." But she seemed troubled. Miss Marple stayed. Silent. Silence invites honesty. She said someone wanted something from her. Something she didn't want to give. She didn't say what. A truth slipped out. Unnarrowed. Unpolished. Real. Miss Marple placed a gentle hand over hers. "Thank you. It helps more than you know." She stood again. Quiet strength in her posture. One more person remained. Someone from Emily's past. A man who once mentored her at the small school. He waited outside his gate, as if expecting her. A hint. A micro-signal. "Miss Marple," he said softly. "I feared you'd come." She stepped closer. "Fearing a question often means knowing the answer," she whispered. His breath shook. Just once. "I didn't harm her," he said quickly. Too quickly. Too planned. Too defensive. Miss Marple nodded. "I didn't say you did." He swallowed. His eyes lowered. "I only told her to be careful. Someone was using her kindness. She trusted too easily." A fear slipped through his words. Not for himself. For Emily. Miss Marple's thoughts tightened. Softly. Clearly. 4 people. 4 cracks. 4 truths. Leaking from quiet places. But one voice trembled more than the rest. One voice hid a deeper weight. One voice carried something unspoken. As Miss Marple walked away, she realized exactly which of them feared the truth most. Miss Marple sat quietly at the small table, hands folded, mind steady. She laid the clues out in her thoughts. One by one. Soft. Calm. Precise. The coat placed too neatly. The hairpin arranged. The bicycle track drawn too clean. The fragment left for show. All staged. all intended to guide her away. Then the bracelet, real, unforced, hidden, not displayed. The only honest clue. She traced the timeline gently. Emily troubled. Emily watched. Emily meeting someone in secret. Emily returning a book too early. Emily avoiding the main road. The stories clashed. Cheerful here, uneasy there. Missing, in one spot, visible in another. Someone used her routine, twisted it, borrowed her name, moved objects for effect, shifted items to build a tidy tale. Miss Marple breathed softly. The misdirection was simple, too simple. Only one person knew the back paths well. Only one stayed calm when others cracked. Only one tried to speak before she arrived, yet said nothing of value. She saw it clearly now, the real motive. Quiet control, hidden fear, a truth pressed down for too long. One person lied, not loudly, softly, carefully, consistently, and Miss Marple knew exactly who it was. The truth settled quietly, like a soft breath in the room. No anger, no sharp voices, just a simple explanation finally allowed to surface. Emily had not run away. She had stepped back to think. Someone close to her feared that choice, feared being left behind, feared losing the small comfort she offered, so they staged a trail. Not to harm her, only to delay the questions, only to hold time still for a moment they were not ready to face. Miss Marple listened with steady patience, then spoke gently. "Fear makes good people clumsy," she said. "It twists intentions, it hides the heart, but truth untangles more kindly than silence ever can." Emily returned soon after, shaken but safe. Understanding settled on all sides, not blame, just a quiet lesson. Kindness must walk with honesty, or it loses its way. And so, dear listeners, another small mystery settles with the cooling tea. A small clue, a small kindness, a small truth, each one guiding us more gently than the last. I pour one quiet cup for you tonight, steam rising softly, a reminder that understanding comes slowly, just as warmth leaves a cup little by little. Thank you for sharing this peaceful moment with us. Thank you for your calm hearts. Rest well, wherever you are. And remember, even the smallest truth can brighten the quietest evening. Before we close tonight, dear listeners, tell me, what moment caught your attention? And where are you listening from this evening? Your words warm this little corner more than you know. The kettle gives a gentle hiss. The clock offers its quiet ticking, and I leave you with one soft whisper. Truth cools slower than tea, but it always cools. Fade into the calm,